Hello, 401 students, and what we're going over today for this video is the comparison and contrast paragraph. So you have writing assignment 2 this week. You're going to write a comparison contrast paragraph. But before that, you're going to do a folder with 2 assignments in it to review the structure of comparison and contrast. So you did that last week, but you go through a quick review this week just to refresh your memory. And then you're going to write the paragraph. So go into week 6, online lessons and assignments. This first folder is to prepare you for the assignment. So it's a review of basically what you did last week. And then there's an assignment to complete. So this just talks about the different patterns of organization, of which one of them is comparison contrast. And that's what you're writing for writing assignment 2. And this tells you what you're going to do in this folder. So you're going to complete a lesson and put together an outline so you know how to use an outline. And then you're going to complete this assignment by reading an example paragraph, actually the same one from this lesson, and looking at how the author supports topic. And your topic is your main subjects that you're going to be comparing, and the support are the similarity and differences that you're going to talk about or write about. This presentation goes over the different types of supporting details, and the assignment takes 2 of those, facts and examples. And you break down the example paragraph and look for the facts and examples and how they're used. And so follow the assignment instructions carefully. Make sure you complete this lesson. You might notice this lesson was in last week, and that's just in case you didn't do it. Even if you did go through it again to refresh your memory, and what you're doing in this lesson, I'll just go into it. It goes over what comparison contrast is, basic structure, and then you're looking at an example paragraph and breaking that paragraph down and putting it into the outline correctly. So this is an outline. The way the outline is set up is it's broken down by your subjects that you choose to talk about. So let's say you're going to compare maybe fiction and nonfiction. Fiction would be subject A, nonfiction would be subject B. And then you have your points of comparison or contrast, so that's your similarities or differences. And they have to be the same for both. So you're going to take this example paragraph, you're going to read it, and you're going to break down the ideas in it and put them into the outline correctly just by taking the quizzes or answering the questions. Once you're done with that, you move on to the next assignment, same paragraph that you're used for this one, and you're looking at the supporting details, like I said. And for this one, you complete the assignment and attach the file. Once you review the structure again, then you can go back and go into the second folder and begin the writing assignment. And these are the general steps, requirements, guidelines for the assignment, and a quiz over those. An outline to plan. And you're going to write a rough draft, add transitions, and then submit your final draft. So click on the folder so we can go into it. Here are the requirements and guidelines. So goal, purpose of comparison contrast, so it's all about comparing similarities and differences. So it helps the reader understand the subject better, or maybe makes a choice between 2 things. I recommend that you choose 2 subjects that might require making a decision between, because it might make it easier to write about. My other suggestion is also, there is, in the earlier week, we went over fiction and nonfiction. And you have that presentation over it. So you could use fiction and nonfiction as your 2 main subjects. Compare past those. So similarities or differences for both. It's actually probably easier to choose one or the other, but some topics you may be able to work in both. But remember, this is a paragraph. You're not writing a complete essay. This tells you what needs to be in it, and this is based on the structure of a comparison contrast, what you learned about, how they're put together. If you follow the outline, you're going to make sure and have everything in there that you need. And this is also, these requirements are what you're going to be graded on the rubric. So make sure you read your requirements and guidelines carefully, take the quiz, and then you need subjects to write about. So what this link is it takes you to different essay topic ideas. So let's go look at that site. If you scroll down, it breaks it down by category. So it has social studies, has language arts, has science and technology. You can use any of these. Daily life might be a good choice because If you're doing something maybe over science and technology, you probably have to look information up. You're not required to, and I actually prefer you didn't. I want you to maybe just do this off with your personal knowledge, or like I said, use the fiction and nonfiction lessons from, I think it was week 2 that you did that, and you can use the presentation. So choose a topic to write about. For the example, I'm going to do fiction and nonfiction. But it's open topic of choice. All right, so after you have your subjects in mind, you know what you're going to write about, your subject or topic, then you're going to start planning. What this is that same presentation you had for the assignment in the previous folder. So it's just there to remind you these are supporting details that you can use once you start planning. So planning the paragraph, you're going to do an outline. You want to download the assignment. I think I already have. Yes, I did. All right, so I'm going to bring it up. Now, remember when you download yours, you'll have that yellow line at the top. You have to click Enable Editing. So this is how you're going to plan your paragraph. So at this point, you just have 2 subjects in mind. And for the example, I'm going to do fiction and nonfiction. And I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to get you started so you have a basic understanding of how to do it. So this is set up the exact same way that that lesson was over the example paragraph over eyeglasses versus laser surgery. For what you do, so here are the instructions, very detailed. So as long as you read carefully, you should understand it, but you're going to create an outline because an outline is pre-writing technique. So this is one of the pre-writing techniques that you're going to be practicing. I will do a different one for the next writing assignment. But what you want to do is you're going to write your information in each box. And it tells you what each section is. So the first Roman numeral, it represents your topic sentence, the first sentence of your paragraph. The second Roman numeral is all about your first subject. The third Roman numeral is your second subject. So we'll go through and I'm going to fill it out for main subject A, and then you would just repeat it for the second one. All right, so the topic sentence, what a topic sentence does, and it tells you, it identifies the 2 main subjects. It indicates whether you're going to talk about similarities or differences. And it sometimes will state the points of comparison. So here's the example, and this is from that example paragraph. So although both eyeglasses and laser surgery can address vision problems successfully, there are differences in the benefits and drawbacks. In this example, eyeglasses is main subject A, laser surgery is main subject B, and the paragraph will give differences and the points of comparison or benefits and drawbacks. So in the red, it follows this example through. So in each one, it's going to give you an example of what your answer is supposed to look like based on this example paragraph. Now, what I'm going to do is do a different subject than the example that's given. So we're going to do fiction versus nonfiction. And so it tells you, it right here asks what your topic sentence is. Well, I know that it has to identify my main subjects, which would be fiction and nonfiction. And I might not start out right away with the sentence. I'm just going to get my basic information in there. So main subject A is fiction. Main subject B will be nonfiction. So right now I'm just going to put commas in between the ideas. Now similarities or differences or both. Well, I'm not sure. Got to figure out what I'm going to write about. So as I'm figuring out what I'm writing about, I'm putting it into the outline. So that's why this is planning the paragraph. You're not going to know exactly all these answers right away. You're going to have to go look for some information or think of some information. So because we're doing fiction and nonfiction, I'm going to go back to the class for a second. And I'm going to go back to week 2, where those lessons were in that presentation. So see fiction, nonfiction. Let's go into week 2, online lessons and assignments, and introduction to reading and writing. So we've got fiction versus nonfiction. I'm going to start here with that presentation. And when you're coming up with what you're going to write about, the first thing you need to decide is are you going to do similarities or differences? And I'm going to do differences, and this is why. Because if we go back to the week. Oh, let me go back one more. If you look at the front for week 2, so here's some characteristics of fiction: character, setting, conflict, theme. Nonfiction: main ideas, supporting details, organization, author's message. None of those things are similar. They're all different. So that tells me there's more differences between these topics than there are similarities. So I'm going to write about differences. So that's how you decide what the information that you know about your subjects, or if you're going to use the fiction versus nonfiction, the information that's given. Are there more similarities or differences? And I do recommend that you choose one or the other. It would be kind of hard to write about both just because of the length. So, fiction and nonfiction, and I have the presentation up. So what this did is it went through, and now what I'm trying to come up with, I know I'm going to talk about differences, but what are the differences that I'm going to talk about? And so this goes through, it talks about fiction and nonfiction. Let me get to where it actually starts. This is just sort of the intro, goes through different types of writing and reading strategies. And okay, what is fiction? So it defines the characteristics of fiction, so it's anything that's invented or imagined. It has theme, and you have to visualize while you read it. There's different types of fiction. So what I'm going to call this, and if you look at, go back into week 2. So here, elements of fiction and elements of nonfiction. That is what my points of comparison are going to be for now. I really should have 2, but because this has so much information in it, I might be able to just do 1. So as you see, even though there's requirements for the outline, depending on your topic, so you have point 1 and point 2. For the purpose of this topic, I'm just going to have 1. You writing about a different topic, you might have definitely 2 different points. And it'll be clear once we get to the supporting details aspect of it, how this will work. So basically, when you decide to write about similarities or differences, you need to know what similarities or what differences you're going to write about. In my case, because of the nature of this topic, I'm just going to write about the elements or characteristics. And differences. Now, this needs to be put into a sentence form. Right now, I can't just put these words up here. I have to write a topic sentence. And what you can do is just follow the structure of the example sentence if you want to. So, for example, although both fiction and nonfiction, now I have to think of something that's similar about them. So, although both, and I'm just following the structure of that example sentence. You can do that, that's perfectly fine. Fiction and nonfiction are types of writing, because they both are, so that works. I'm following the structure of the example. There are differences in their elements and characteristics. You didn't do that. Okay, sorry about that. In their elements, characteristics. Okay, so basically, this tells me overall what my paragraph is going to be about. Well, I'm going to write about fiction and nonfiction, and I'm going to write about the differences in their characteristics. And so this is my final topic sentence. So I'm just going to make that bold. So it stands out, and it's the exact same structure as the example, and that's fine. You can do that. That's why those examples are there. So my first main subject, and here this is just, I'm just going to put that it is fiction. So and see, you just follow the example that's given. The first main subject is fiction. So just copied and pasted that sentence. It would have been easier. All right, I don't want this red though, so if you want to change the color of the of something, you highlight it and come over to the A, change it to the color you want. So my first main subject is fiction. Now I have my points of comparison, which are my differences, but the category of differences that I'm talking about are the elements and characteristics. So the first point of comparison or contrast is the benefits of wearing eyeglasses. That's my example. So I would change that to the first point of contrast, because I'm writing about differences, is the characteristics. I'm going to put the characteristic elements. So the first point of contrast is the characteristic elements of fiction. Now, specific example for point one. Now, this is where I mentioned earlier that it depends on your topic. The outline might change a little bit. If you have to change things or relabel things, that's fine. So in this case, my overall point of contrast, are the characteristic elements of fiction. Now, because I don't have a second point of contrast, I'm going to have more specific examples. All right, so what I'm going to do right now, so point one is my point of contrast. I'm going to come up with a specific example for point one, but instead of doing a point two, I'm going to come up with another specific example for point one. And you can do that if you only have one overall general category of differences or similarities that you're writing about, then you can just come up with more specific examples. So if you need to change the outline a little bit, you can. So the structure is you follow the general structure, but it might change it a little bit depending on your topic. And so for this case, I'm not going to have this. So I'm just going to scratch these out. I'm going to do a strikeout. Because I'm not going to fill in this information. I'm just going to extend my examples. All right, now, what I want to make sure and point out to you is, and we'll come back and do these specific examples in a minute, and you can jump around in outline just like I'm doing. What I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and fill out my information for main subject B so that I make sure and fill it out the same, because your points of comparison or contrast have to be the same for both subjects or topics. And what I mean by that is if I'm talking about the elements or characteristics of fiction, then I have to talk about the same thing for nonfiction. I can't do characteristics of fiction and then the different types of stories that are written, the different types of essays for nonfiction. So you can't have two different points of comparison contrast. They have to be the same. Now my main subject B is nonfiction. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy and paste this sentence. So Control C copies, Control V paste, but this is my second, so I'm going to change a couple words in here. The second main subject is nonfiction. So I'm going to add non. And my point of contrast is going to be the same. So the first point of contrast is the characteristic elements of nonfiction. And I'm going to copy this sentence, Control C to make my life easier. I have to retype everything. And Control V to paste. And I'm going to add non. And I'm going to do the same thing over here that I did with the first part, is because I only have one general category or point of comparison or contrast. I'm going to extend my examples. So I'm going to take out the second point, strike that out to remind myself I'm not doing that, and I'm going to extend the examples for the first point. Okay, so now I have characteristics or elements of fiction, but now I need specific examples of what those are. Well, what is in the lesson are the characteristics of fiction. Now, these are types of fiction, so you can't do this. What I want you to scroll down to, look here, elements of fiction. So fiction has plot, flashback, foreshadowing, characters, dialogue, setting, conflict. Well, I'm not going to be able to write about all of these things. But what I want to do is go ahead and look at the elements of nonfiction to see which examples are going to work the best that I can pull. So let me go down to nonfiction. I'm just going to scroll through the slide till I find those elements. Okay, here they are. So it looks over here, some of the things are similar. But for the most part, there's lots of differences. And like I said, I'm doing the differences. So I'm going to stick with what's on this side of the chart. So we have facts, opinions, main ideas, supporting details, organization, diction, tone, and imagery. So this is all about how nonfiction is organized. Well, for the most part, it is main idea and supporting details. And then it's organized in different ways, just like you're writing right now. And I think I'm going to stick with those three things. So this is, as you're planning, you want to, narrow down or broaden if needed. So I'm kind of just talking myself through this, deciding what I'm going to include because I can't write about everything because it's only a paragraph. So I'm going to go back up to fiction. So I have plot, the order of events, the plot, it aligns with the same idea of what the main idea and supporting details is in nonfiction. So I'm going to keep plot. And then we have things like characters, dialogue, setting, conflict. Well, fiction is fiction mainly because it is an order of events and it has different characters in it and it takes place in a certain setting and there's always a conflict. So I'm going to do those. So the elements of fiction that I'm going to talk about, the first one is going to be plot. And right now, I'm not writing out complete sentences. I'm just going to take some notes. So plot, the order of events, that take place in the story. And then I'm going to do characters. So I'm going to define each of these. So characters are people that are the focus of the story. And I might want to probably define fiction first. I left that out. So I'm going to go back and add that. So what fiction is, it is, and I'm going to go back to my presentation and just use that official definition that it gave me. I know what that is. So anything that is invented or imagined by the writer, and it might be based on real people, events, or experiences, but the character settings are invented. Now, I'm going to use this, but I'm copying this from something. So I don't want to just leave it as it is. I have to put this in quotation marks. Because that tells me I didn't write this originally. I'm taking somebody else's words. So I'm going to put beginning quotation marks and then Control V to paste, and then end quotations at the end. So anything real or imagined by the writer. And because I copied and pasted this over from a PowerPoint, it looks a little weird. So I'm going to have to fix my formatting here. So I'm just deleting some spaces. So fiction is anything that's invented or imagined by a writer, although it may be based on real people, events, or experiences. Its characters and settings are invented. Okay. Now, I've got a definition for fiction. So I want to balance that out with the definition for nonfiction. So if you're going to see how I'm doing this, I'm putting it together, but I'm bouncing around on the outline. And that's what you're supposed to do because you want your writing for comparison and contrast to kind of line up. So whatever you're talking about with fiction, you want to make sure you talk about the similar thing with nonfiction. So for this first one for nonfiction, I'm going to get the definition of nonfiction from the presentation. And again, I'm going to put it in quotes. Where's that? Sure. Find it someday. Okay, Okay, nonfiction tells about real people, places, events, thoughts, and times. So Control C to copy. Bring it back over to my outline. My quote marks, because I took this from a presentation. Those aren't my words. All right, so nonfiction tells about real people, places, events, thoughts, and times. Okay, so there's my specific example, my first one, but I have to have more than one. Now remember, I typed things in this box, but I can't see them. I just need to move it down. You can do that. If it starts to format funky, just come over here and return until you have more room. So you can make these boxes bigger. All right, so fiction, so it's invented or imagined by a writer. And its characters and settings are invented, they're not real. So I'm going to talk about character and plot and setting. What I'm going to do though, because I've already put this definition here, I'm going to bring these two down to my next specific example. Because for me, that just fits better. Let's have the definition for each one as the first specific example. And for the second one, I'm talking about the elements of plot and characters, and I was going to do setting. That's where the story takes place. Now, like I said, you want things to kind of be balanced out and aligned. So what you're talking about in one subject, you talk about something similar in the next. Well, this is plot, characters, and setting. So I need to figure out what I need to talk about for nonfiction that is similar to this. Well, this is what makes up the story for fiction. Plot is what happens as the characters go through, what events are taking place, what actions the characters are participating in, and where they're at. In nonfiction, there are not characters. It could be about people, it could be about places, it could be about things. But it is based on not characters and setting, but main ideas and supporting details. So that's what I'm going to put for my next example for my second main subject, which is nonfiction. So I'm going to do main ideas, supporting details. And you go back to the presentation, because I could just copy, I might be able to just copy and paste information. Make it my life easier. Let's go way back here. Okay. So main idea, supporting details, and I'm going to do organizations. Nonfiction, those are the three main things I think that are most important about nonfiction. Whereas fiction, it was the plot, the characters, and the setting. Nonfiction is all about the main topic that you're writing about, how you explain that topic with supporting details, and how you organize the information. And I'm going to do Control C to copy. Over here, and do Control V to paste. And I want to define what these are, just like I did with the other one. So main idea is what the writing is mainly about or focused on. And I could look up a definition for, you can look up definitions for words too also if you're not sure. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because I don't really like the way that's described. It's kind of It's moved over earlier. There we go. Okay, finally. All right, so main idea, definition. Oh, and it comes up for me. So click that. So main idea of a paragraph is the author's message about the topic. It is often expressed directly or it can be implied. It's all right. I like this one better. The most important or central thought of a paragraph or larger section of a text, which tells the reader what the text is about. So the most important or central, I'm going to use focus. So you hear me pausing and kind of thinking about this as I'm going. I'm doing this because that's what you need to be doing when you put together the outline. You're not going to know all the answers right away. You might go back and change things, rearrange things, but that's what it's about. This is to make sure this is to help you organize your ideas and get your ideas down before you actually write the paragraph out. So main idea, the most important or central, I'm just going to put controlling idea. I like that better. Most important or control idea of a paragraph. And then supporting details, I'm going to look that up too, because I know what supporting details are, but I'm not sure how I write it. And so I changed that a little bit. I didn't take it word for word, so I didn't have to put it in quotes. So supporting details definition. So provide information to clarify, prove, or explain the main idea. And I'm going to keep this definition as it is, so I'm going to copy and paste that, but put quote marks. And the quotes are just telling me, myself, and my reader that I know this information is not mine. I got this information from somewhere else. No, I'm not plagiarizing. And for right now, that's all you need to do. You don't need to cite your information yet. We'll get there. So Control B to paste and put my quote marks so I know I took that information from the internet. It's not mine. And then organization is how the paragraph is structured, how the ideas in the paragraph are structured. Okay, so now I have a basic idea of what I'm writing about. It's not perfect, but as I put it into the paragraph form and write the rough draft, it'll get better. But that's what you're doing with the outline. And like I said, you could change things if you need to. You might have 2 points of comparison. So let's say that you're writing about 2 credit cards and you're going to compare the interest rate and the rewards. So those are your 2 points. Point 1 is interest rates for the credit cards. Point 2 is the rewards. In my case, for fiction and nonfiction, I only had 1 point, so I just made sure I had extended examples. All right, so you are going to turn the outline in, and this is all I'm expecting. It doesn't have to be detailed sentences because you're not going to do that till you write the paragraph out. And what you'll do is attach this and turn it in. Then your next assignment, so I'm going to go back to the class. Contact is back to week 6. Okay, so this was the planning the paragraph, so I would attach my outline to turn it in. And now this isn't an assignment right here that you turn in for, you don't have to turn in your rough draft, you just want to turn it in once you get it to the final draft. This is the template to use to write the paragraph, and I've already downloaded it, so I'm going to bring it up. You have to click Enable Editing, and you want to replace this information. Don't leave it here. So your name, so I would put my name, Kathleen Anderson. Walker Anderson, but I'm just going to do Anderson. And the instructor name would be the same again. You it'll be different. Course number, ENRD 401. Of course, the date. Date is July 9th and comes up, so I'm going to press enter. I want to title it. I'm not going to do that right now for my rough draft. I'm going to wait till after I'm done to title it. But I would start by putting my topic sentence here. And so you can copy and paste your information from your outline to begin your rough draft. So although both fiction and nonfiction are types of writing, there are differences in their elements and characteristics. So Control C. And my first sentence is my topic sentence. So, and that one's already written there for me, but now when I put the rest in, I'm going to change the font. I don't want it bold or italics. Just want it normal. So as I put the rest of the information in, I'm going to have to make it into sentences. And so you're writing, that's why it's your rough draft. You can get everything in there first and then go back and put transitions in. But you do need to attempt transitions. And this is a sort of mini lesson going through them. And what transitions are is they're ways to connect ideas. So when you transition from one idea to the next. So let's say you stop talking, you give your point of comparison for fiction, which is elements or characteristics, and you're about to give your first example. Before your first example, you want to transition because it's a new idea. So as you move from one idea to the next, you use transitions, and you choose them based on what you're writing about. And what I put up here, the ones that you're most commonly going to use. If you're introducing an example, it's going to be one of these. So to illustrate, for example, to be specific, and then if you're contrasting things, it's going to be one of these words that can contrast. If you're comparing or similarities, it's going to be these words. So in like manner, just as, similarly. So you choose your transitions based on your ideas. So my first idea that I'm writing about is the elements of fiction. So here's my outline. I have fiction and first point of contrast, characteristics or elements of fiction. You do not want that to be your first sentence. You don't state that it's a point of contrast. The only reason we look at it that way is so that you understand the structure, you're putting in the correct information. So you want to change this so that it is worded a different way. And if you look at the example paragraph, they don't say the first point of comparison is. So you don't want to word it like this. You want to change it so that it flows like a paragraph and you're just writing about your topics, not the words associated with the structure. So although both fiction and nonfiction are types of writing, there are differences in their elements and characteristics. So what I would start out with first is the definition. So I'm going to go ahead and begin with my example because I've already introduced the idea of what the elements and characteristics I'm going to talk about. So fiction is defined as and then I would bring in my definition. And the next thing that I would offer is my example. So I might do, for example, or for instance, and I'm not finishing this out just so I can kind of give you a general idea of how you're putting this together. So you have your topic sentence. You have your first sentence about your first main subject. In this case, I'm putting the definition of fiction. And then the next thing I need to do is talk about these differences in their elements and characteristics. So I might start out with, in contrast to nonfiction, fiction takes place in a specific setting and focuses on particular characters and events. And then I start talking about plot since I mentioned events. So the series of events, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so that's what you're doing. You take the outline to get your ideas down basically, and you may not, and even here, I talked about setting and characters and events, but that's not how I wrote it on the outline. I actually wrote it on the outline in the opposite order. So you're not stuck to the outline. The outline is just to get your ideas down to plan in general, and you really start to change things up when you type the paragraph up. And make this bigger for a minute. Sorry, 150. Was it bigger? Okay. So this little blue line came up underneath what I typed, and when that happens, you want to pay attention. You might see a blue one, you might see a red one. So I'm going to right click, and what this is doing is it's telling me, okay, I have a problem with the language, so more concise language would be clearer for your reader. So fiction takes place in a specific setting and focuses on particular characters and events. On particular characters, comma, their lives, and important events. No, I'll just do it in events. Okay, so I had to fix the grammar. So the program, the Microsoft Word program will help you correct your sentences and such as you go. So don't ignore the squiggly lines and the red lines and all those. Right click on them and it gives you more information. All right, so once you get your rough draft done, you want to go back and fix your sentences. Think of your what you did for the revising and editing of the narrative, the compound and complex sentences. You're using the same types of things in this writing. And once you are happy with your paragraph and you get it to what you believe is the final draft phase, then you will attach your document to the assignment, and it's going to be the very last assignment listed is to submit your final draft. I did attach the rubric so you can look at that so you know how you're being graded. And I don't know if you noticed, but at the beginning of this folder, it changed, it gave you a new due date. So you all have until Monday at the end of the day to finish these assignments. So writing assignment 2, comparison and contrast. And what we went over was how to fill out your outline and how this is just kind of a map for you. You're going to jump around on the outline as you're filling it out. You might have to look information up and come back. So that's what planning is about. It's and changing things and adding things. So that's what the outline is for, is to help guide you to put the ideas into your paragraph before you actually write the paragraph. But that is it today. So I wanted to go through that with you because I just felt like it's easier to see the explanation than it is to understand the process. You're just reading it as a series of lessons on the screen. But if you have any questions about the assignment or anything in the video, just send me an email me or send me a message through Remind, which I'm not hearing much from anybody out there. So hopefully everybody's doing good. But don't hesitate to ask me any questions if you need to. Okay, and like I said, this is due Monday by the end of the day. And just like the narrative, you will eventually have a chance to revise this. But we'll write a different paragraph first, and then we're going to go back to revising for writing assignments 2 and 3 together. Okay, so that is that. I'm done talking. And happy writing.